Guys, it's game over. I was defeated by a vacuum cleaner. It broke, I tried to fix it, and it broke even further. Or so I thought a week ago when I asked you if you wanted to see a video about my failure. I take that as a yes. Eventually, I managed to bring my Dyson glorified broomstick back to life. But this video is not only about that. It's about how poor design choices and a $1 component made an $800 appliance completely unusable. So how did we get here? It was around 2010 when we bought a pretty regular vacuum by Philips. It wasn't the quietest or the lightest, but it sucked really well, and I mean that in a good way. Until 2023, when the power button stopped working. I found the spare part and I could easily replace it, but then I thought I've had this vacuum for about 13 years. The new ones must be better, right? So without doing a lot of research, I ordered a Dyson V15 Detect Absolute. It was expensive and it had big words in the name, so I assumed it's well made. I was wrong. To be fair, the vacuum was convenient to use. It didn't have a cable, even my kid could use it, and the laser brush was genuinely useful. However, after 2.5 years of use and 6 months after the warranty expired, the vacuum stopped working. It would run for a couple of seconds and then shut off without displaying any error messages. At first I thought the battery had gone bad. After all, lithium-ion batteries have a limited lifespan of around 500 cycles, so I got a replacement. Unfortunately, that did not fix anything, so I kept researching. I came across a lot of comments online from people having the same issue. Here is just one of many videos. It has over 60,000 views and 100 comments from people saying "same here." And this Reddit post pointed to a set of capacitors inside the motor body causing the issue. In case you don't know, capacitors are these can-shaped components. They can store a tiny bit of charge, not as much as a battery, but they can collect and release that charge really fast, which makes them ideal for stabilizing voltage. And since capacitors are cheap and common parts, I assumed that maybe I could fix my vacuum. After all, it wasn't working anyway, so it wouldn't matter even if I fail. And besides, there are already many videos where they show you how to take the motor unit apart to reach the presumably faulty caps. I'll put links to these in the description. Okay, let's do this. I started by taking out the battery, the filter, and the dust bin, which comes off when you press a lever down here. There was dust everywhere, so I cleaned as much as I could using one of these manual air pump blower thingies. Next, I took out all the screws that I saw. The vacuum was held together by two types of screws. Some were star-shaped T8 screws, and the rest were Phillips head screws. I had to use a slightly longer screwdriver for the ones around the filter. Now, if you hate Phillips screws, I cannot blame you. It's probably because they are easy to strip and then they are impossible to unscrew. Well, the problem may not be in the screw type. If it slips, your screwdriver is probably too small. See, one of these screwdrivers is a size PH0 and the other is a PH1. They look almost identical, but if you try using a PH0 driver on a PH1 screw like this one, it will slip. There are larger sizes like PH2 and PH3, but do not judge a screwdriver by its size. Look, this screwdriver is still a PH1 despite being much larger. If you use the right size screwdriver for Phillips screws, you should be fine. Anyway, I managed to take the unit apart. This exposed even more dust, which I also cleaned. The next obstacle was this white plastic cover. It was not only screwed in place, but also glued from the bottom. Fortunately, the glue wasn't very strong. I lifted the cover with a flat screwdriver. Pushing on this connector released the cover and revealed the circuit board. After that, I unplugged every cable that I saw and removed the screws holding the cables going to the battery. That was easier said than done because the board was covered in what looked like hot glue. It turned out to be something called conformal coating, which keeps the components protected from dust and vibrations. It was not too difficult to chip away, but it was sure annoying to deal with. Here's what the motor looks like, and it's a lot smaller than I expected. The tricky part now is that the faulty capacitors are on the other side of the circuit board, which itself is soldered to the two terminals of the motor. This makes the solder very difficult to melt. Touching the iron to the metal causes the heat to dissipate and the tip cools down. Eventually, with patience and some wiggling, I separated the circuit board from the motor. In the process, I think I damaged the board slightly, but it still seemed usable. The motor, on the other hand, I tried to power it from my bench power supply, but it wouldn't spin. Uh-oh, and my multimeter showed a suspiciously low resistance across the terminals. I assumed I had damaged the motor, and at this point I was ready to give up. But after more research, I found out that the control board was driving the motor with pulses of power, not with pure direct current. So perhaps there was still hope. I proceeded by removing the old capacitors. I tested them to see if they were any good, and, as predicted, they were not. All three had an ESR of around 2 ohms, which was significantly higher compared to these replacements. I got them for about $1 each, link in the description. These, by the way, are polymer capacitors. They are comparable in size and specs to the originals. I do not think that regular electrolytics are good enough for this application. Also, I wanted to use larger capacitors as replacements, but they simply wouldn't fit. Now that I had the new capacitors in place, it was time to put the vacuum back together. I soldered the PCB back to the motor using generous amounts of flux and fresh solder. Honestly, I was happy to have the disassembly process filmed on camera so I could track back every step. As soon as I could, I put the battery back into the handle and tested the vacuum. Success! The vacuum works normally without cutting off. So I put the rest of the parts in their places and vacuumed the carpet in celebration. But make no mistake, this is the first and last Dyson product I'm ever going to buy. A vacuum that dies after only 2 years of use is an embarrassment, and I'm sure this could have been avoided. You see, capacitors are sensitive to heat. High temperatures cause the electrolyte inside them to evaporate, which results in faster degradation. So what did Dyson do? They put the capacitors as close as possible to the motor, the hottest thing inside the entire vacuum. Then sealed them and made this circuit board needlessly difficult to repair. So is this planned obsolescence? Is this motor designed intentionally to fail? I cannot say for sure, but here's my theory. I think this objectively flawed design is the result of Dyson's priorities. Some of you may know that I used to work as a journalist, and I've had a number of opportunities to speak with people who design products for a living. One time, one of these people described the process as a competition between different teams. On the one side, you have designers who want to make it thin, light, beautiful, and on the other side, you have the engineers who want to give it the longest battery life, the best antennas, the newest cameras, and so on. These goals are often in conflict with one another, so inevitably compromises have to be made. I believe Dyson's priority here was to get the highest efficiency in the smallest size and the lightest package at any cost. Longevity and repairability were never as important, so they were compromised, intentionally or not. After all, people buy products based on what they can do with them today, not 2 years in the future. And to be fair, circuit boards can be complicated to lay out, especially in cases like this one, where you have a switching design driving a motor with huge amounts of current. But still, I am convinced Dyson knew this part would fail. They could make it easier to service and they could make it last longer. After all, the battery wires are screwed to the PCB, not soldered. Why not do the same with the motor terminals? They simply chose not to bother, either because longevity was never a priority or because it would have been cheaper to honor a few thousand warranties than to redesign the entire product. Or at least that's my theory. I tried several times to reach Dyson for a comment, but never heard back from them. Let's hope this video gets their attention. Support for the channel comes from these lovely people on Patreon who have early access to content, the projects I'm working on, and can text me anytime. If you want to help me make more videos, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. It really makes a difference. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.